South Carolina is recognized for any questions he may have.
I don't have any questions. I echo what Thomas said. This has been very informative. It really has on both sides. Mr. Goose, everybody here has added value. And Mr. McGovern, your questions are really pertinent, and I enjoyed hearing this debate. You know, I don't know of anything more important than what we're doing here. It involves money. It involves spending. And Matt, I think you're probably right. Getting to this point is going to force some things. You're not going to see from the Republican side, you won't see us in this box again because they know we've got the power to, or got the stickability to do it. You know, I'm reminded of Thomas Edison when he's asked, don't you consider yourself a failure because you failed 1,000 times? He said, no, my experiments just didn't work 1,000 times. And what we've done, the wrong road we've been down, hasn't worked, evidenced by $32 trillion that none of us here are willing to accept. Now, how we get there is going to be the question, but we're willing to work on it and stay here. And I'm like all of y'all, we'll stay here all night long. It doesn't matter until we get it worked out. Now, timing ain't good, as you said. Well, both of you, Mr. McGovern, Mr. Goose, it's not good. But because what's in my mind, we got a national crisis on this border. We've got a national security crisis with this border. And that bothers me. When you have close to 8 to 10 million people in this country, we don't know anything about them. That's a crisis. And getting voting cards and Social Security numbers, that's a crisis. That's a weight that I feel, particularly now. But
Would the gentleman yield just quickly?
Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for your comments. I feel I want to add this in defense of the much maligned Appropriations Committee. Everybody here seems to forget for 10 years the Appropriations Committee not only held from fiscal year 2010, fiscal year 2019, go to 19, you'll find the military budget smaller than it was in 2010 and the non-defense numbers lower than it was in fiscal year 2010. So that we actually did, and that was under Republican control. The drivers, as always, I mean, this is really important. I have no dispute with anything anybody's got to say. I think this has been healthy and good. But Congress really wants to get serious about spending, then we need to start talking to people on Ways and Means and E&C, because 60% of money's in 3 programs. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, about 10% on interest in national debt. You got 30% left. A little bit over half of that is defense, which, you know, Republicans usually want to increase as opposed to decrease, and I actually agree with that judgment. My good friend, Mr. McGovern, might not. But I just say that because, again, we need to do this process exactly as has been outlined here. But if you're an appropriate, you say, we did that for 10 years, waiting for those other committees to do their job. And in that 10-year period, non-discretionary spending went from 1.9 to 3.2 trillion dollars. We actually had the largest, most rapid decline in the deficit from about $1 trillion in 2010 down to under 500 billion in about a 6 or 7 year period. I sat on the Budget Committee at that time, and exactly what our CBO told us happened. When you get to that point, because people are retiring at 10,000 a day, turning 65, not necessarily retiring, that curve's going to start going right back up if you don't do something in these other areas. And I'm not presuming to say what that should be. I'm not on those committees, but the Appropriations Committee, and it will continue to try and do its job. But if we think we're going to find a solution to the spending problem in the Appropriations Committee, they don't control enough of the budget to do it. So when our friends from E&C and Ways and Means come here, let's all make sure they understand you're not just here to, you know, increase entitlement programs, which both parties have done, or, you know, cut taxes, which only one party's really done much of that. You guys got to do your part if you really want a balanced budget. And those committees, which are part of our Congress, our colleagues, have not done their job. You know, I shouldn't say those committees. We have not, as a Congress, done our job in those areas. And so again, I'm happy to have the debates over spending. I think they're good, and you can always find something to cut in every one of these appropriations bills, and every one. But they are nickels and dimes to the dollars that are in the others. And I've seen very few bills that have been introduced by anybody on either side of the aisle that result in the reduction or reform or whatever, or even additional revenue into. There are some, actually. I think our friend from Connecticut has got a Social Security reform bill. It's a lot more money than I would do, but oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to break. John. Yes, Larson. Thank you. I'm sorry. I should have remembered, because he did put money on the table. So I shouldn't have interrupted you to do that. I just, we're talking a lot about one area, and it's very important. And it's actually the easiest one for all of us to get our fingers around and into. Because again, we just, there was a time when Congress decided whether or not there was going to be an increase in the Social Security check. And we gave that up long before any of us were in Congress back in the 1970s. So we've turned over a lot of control ourselves just because it's politically convenient to avoid the decisions there. And when we get back to that, I think we'll be back on the right road in terms of reversing some of these things. So anyway, you're very kind to have allowed me to intrude in your time. I appreciate my friend from South Carolina allowing me to do that.
No, and I appreciate Chairman Cole. And some of the conversation I had with August Pfluger, with Michael Waltz, I was looking at the DOD budget, and I was going down the line. I said, particularly with August, I said, August, how do we avoid these $500 hammers? That's a big number. And he said, that's a good point. I said, I know you want to get back to building ships, airplanes, missiles. He said, yeah, and that's where the commission came up that, frankly, McCarthy had brought up. Same thing with Michael Walsh. He said, we're in danger right now because we couldn't fight a war if we had to. But you talk about Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, that's the next gorilla that we're going to have to. And I think because of this group, I think we'll be doing that. We've got to. I mean, we're wasting our time if we just think this minuscule part of what we're talking about, 25% at best, when you include the military and transportation. So I agree with you. But no, thank y'all for your time. This has been a good exercise. You learn a lot. I yield back.
Thank you very much. My good friend from Texas, recognized for any questions